2024 to order. Our agenda is to clean up what we haven't pinned down on the budget through last week.
I guess I'm with Susan. I'd like to hear from Debbie about deadlines and timeframes and what we need for what.
So you guys will have your public hearing in September. You will adopt in August. We just have to have salary set by November 30th.
Can you say that one more time? I couldn't hear you very well.
Public hearing is in September. Your meeting. Your meeting's in, adoption is in October. And you have to have salary set by November 30th.
But we don't want to do it that way again.
No.
Okay.
We actually, Stephanie and I have worked all day today. I think we have all the salaries, everything in there. There was just a few dollars here and there because she corrected what I did. But she and I have all the salaries in and should be what I gave you. It might be a little bit of a difference where she made some corrections, but all the salaries are in there. Any changes you guys made on what I sent you today, they're in there. So it's all done what I sent you.
10 pieces of paper. What can we accomplish budget-wise this Wednesday? What part of what you just said, anything?
Nothing. You guys are really, yeah, because you wanted to wait until you made sure that everything was done before you had your public hearing or anything, so,
Okay,
So-
nothing
think we'll talk
official
about it
relating to
today.
the budget this Wednesday.
We'll talk.
no.
We do have
Oh.
two ordinances related to the Wagner and Shealy
Right.
report.
Will that be in our folder, I assume? It went to
Yes.
Joel. Okay.
Yes, because I think you guys already have copies, and I'm getting ready to send you your other stuff, but I think you guys have copies of those ordinances that
Should, yes.
you were sent to you, and then determine what you're gonna do September 1st.
That's what I was gonna say, is we're gonna adopt those two ordinances from Wagner and Shealy. If we've got wages figured out for all positions, then we need to have some sort of an ordinance to adopt those. Last year, we adopted them all by ordinance with every individual listed, I believe, which I assume that's fairly easy for Stephanie to produce.
You could really adopt it by your spreadsheet.
Okay, it doesn't list every individual, but it lists every position, I think.
It lists every position. We don't necessarily need them as individuals because on most of the budgets, it's as a position and not as a person.
I think we can.
We can probably
majority,
do
we
it.
can do that, but we do have some exceptions. that we
Yeah,
have to address.
and we can go through and see what we can accomplish for Wednesday's meeting as an ordinance.
Okay.
If we don't get it adopted, then you guys could maybe change your work, because don't you have a work session the last Thursday of this month?
We do.
Maybe we could change that to a public hearing
25.
or a meeting,
We
special
could.
meeting, and then you could adopt it then.
Yeah.
How does anyone?
It's an option.
You or your
Henry
computer.
County
It's
Auditor.
talking to me.
101S Main Street.
Turn-
Welcome to AI.
Volume off.
765-529-2800.
I don't know what I turned on though, but,
don't either,
okay.
but you've got your
Microsoft
volume
Edge
on.
text to speech, pause, okay, thank you.
But once you guys start talking about salaries, we have a few questions.
Well, in my opinion, we need to nail down these salaries as close as we can today. If we're going to implement anything September 1, then we need to be able to vote on something Wednesday. And it'll take a period of time for those changes to all be implemented by payroll, so.
I have down that we did not pin down yet, probation. We bannered about 4%, because we're on the minimum of the range that the state gives us, and we did not pin down for sure the two positions that are already above midpoint. I think I suggested give them a 2% until we catch up and not give them anything, not give them no raise, and we
Which two
did settle on
positions are those?
surveyor and GIS. And we did make a point to say council was getting no raise, and we did agree to that.
You
I-
could come, do you
I-
want to come over here?
I thought we came to consensus that we were going to budget probation plus 4%. Is that what's it?
That's what I thought.
Okay, good.
I left probation
I
with the
didn't know
4%.
Official, we talked about, it.
Right.
Okay, good. And I didn't know if we made official those two positions that we were not going to give them zero raise.
I think we need to still have discussion about the surveyor and the elected department heads and chief deputies. We didn't come to any conclusion on those.
Well, we didn't come to any agreement on those.
Yeah. And on elected department heads and chief deputies, and the surveyor would be one of those. And that was one of the positions Kenan was referring to.
Right. And my position is the same as Addie's, what she gave her thoughts on it.
I think we should start one at a time, and I want to add the merit polls to the list. I have communication with the sheriff. I want to share with everyone, just to make sure everyone's aware.
The other one I have that we didn't land on anything with was safe at home.
Oh, yeah.
And, we ended that with Bobby and I were gonna talk to Joel, and I have been so occupied that I have, please, if you, sure. We've got an extra mic right there at the end for you.
So I was talking to, see if I can do this, with Angela Cox. There are no other counties that have Safe at Home actually under the county as an employee. She did suggest that we talk to Wayne County and a couple other people. We'll also need to talk to Joel, but there are no other counties that have Safe at Home under the county as county employees.
I don't disagree with that at all. Can't tell you that.
And there are reasons behind it. Look, this was at Thursday night at 10:30 at night, so I can't
And that
she's at
was
a conference.
Angela that said that?
Angela Cox. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do know that there are other counties that have a victim advocate.
Yes,
And
there is a difference
that's
between victim
very
advocate
much
and
so,
Safe
yes.
at Home. And those
Very
are some of
much
the things, so I think we'll bring Angela into that conversation when she gets back
Happy
from her
to-
conference.
happy
Because
to.
she has a lot of information on that, but there are none. The actual what Safe at Home does is more than just a victim advocate.
Completely agree.
And there are no counties that have Safe at Home as county employees, the director. There are prosecutors' offices that have victim advocates,
Right.
but not Safe at Home. So I think we need to bring, I'm not sure when she's coming back from her conference. I don't remember how many days she's at it.
Mhm.
When she comes back, we can have that conversation.
Happy to have her in on the conversation. And I think we should discuss with Joel. We do have one additional, I mean, we have an example where we actually supply an employee to an organization, and that's the EDC. We pay wages and benefits to an individual who works in that department and is not managed, if you will, by the county. But it's something that we could consider, and if we cannot come to a conclusion before budget time, I would like to have something in the budget as a what if, and then we can discuss it with Joel. Just because it's in the budget doesn't mean it's a done deal, so.
So that's one we're not gonna be able to decide on until some conversations, including Joel.
Well, it's really easy to put the dollar amount in the budget. It's not real easy to make the change happen, but, so if we're gonna move forward and try to approve a budget pretty darn quick, I would wanna try to put it in there just to have the dollars in case it did work, with the understanding that we could cut it later. But I'm open to what we can do. I would hate to see that organization go away.
You wanna put that on a podium? Or your county steps like people do? Keep it where it is. Disney World, 9,500 steps today.
Angela has a whole lot more information. So and I don't want to, again, it was last Thursday at 10:30 at night, so I don't want to try to reiterate and get anything wrong. So when she comes back, I think and even if you don't put it into the budget, you can always create a
We could
position
create
and,
it later, yes.
yeah, exactly.
Understood. Thank you.
So you brought up those positions. I know what my position are on those positions. You brought up merit deputies. Who wants to go first?
Hmm.
Oh, why not? I'll go first. I threw out a proposal that, chief deputies be paid the 65,000 number and, or I'm sorry, elected department heads be paid the $65,000 number, and chief deputies be paid the 58,656, which was 90% of that. I forwarded Addie's response to that. The primary holdup from my understanding, the big chink in the wire on that one is that if a licensed surveyor were to be elected at the next election, and we had to make that licensed surveyor's salary 150% of what we were paying the surveyor, then that wage would be 98,000 and change, which would be a big darn dollar number for a surveyor in Henry County. So
I'm sorry.
I've
what?
had further discussion with others about that. And Joel was included in those conversations. And Joel made it very clear that just because we have a salary ordinance for an unlicensed surveyor doesn't mean that we have to use that that salary ordinance times 150% to pay a licensed surveyor. We could change that at the time of that election, that person should make more money as a licensed surveyor. But I also have a ton of information related to the lack of licensed surveyors in the state of Indiana. There's non-existent,
These retire, the current pool,
and there's no,
they'd have to get their education out of the state of Indiana because it's.
Yes.
Yeah.
right, there's no other
Sans Purdue.
programs teaching it,
No,
so.
They'd have to come in from out of state.
Is it likely that we would have a licensed surveyor run for a surveyor and be elected? I think the chances of that are minimal. But if it were to happen, according to Joel, we do have recourse to kind of set the record straight in that area. I know that Susan sent an email to Addie asking about number of hours worked and could we calculate out a average hourly rate for a surveyor? And she came up with a number, and that calculates out to about $57,000, as I recall.
Did you average the two together or what hourly
No,
rate? Did you use license?
I
by
used the
hour?
unlicensed
Used
number,
the
multiplied it by 2,080,
Okay,
and it came out to be more so than what the comparable was.
can you tell me again what it was, 58?
It was 57 and change.
Sorry, everyone, go ahead. 58 again?
Yeah, I'll have to
Okay.
try to find that number, so hold on.
I couldn't hear you again, I'm sorry. I do, there's just a concern about the recommended wage for there's a concern about the recommended wage for the surveyor. And we're just trying to decide if the number WIS gave us seems to be
What did
the right
Wagner,
number or if it's something else.
what did Wagner, Irwin, Shealy suggest? I don't,
52, I think, was the midpoint.
that was the midpoint of an unlicensed.
Yeah, he would have gotten zero raise and
It
it would have been a
was-
decrease.
51,179 for the midpoint.
So the average hourly though for a non-licensed surveyor came in at $27.16 an hour. And that number times 2080 will give us a full-time wage.
So are these not the same because the surveyors don't all work full-time?
That's exactly what that means, in my opinion.
Right,
That
okay.
data that she had for surveyors.
Would we find that for other department heads as well, if we did the same?
That's a good question for Debbie. Debbie, would you know the other elected department heads? their comparables outside. Did generally, all the other elected department heads work a 40-hour week
Elected officials is where I'm.
in
Yeah.
Henry
No,
County
you're good.
and
I'll
outside of
work.
Henry County?
In every county,
Most-
do they work?
Most all
full-time?
of them work between 35 and 40.
In every, in your experience, is the surveyor different?
No, survey's never been different. The only ones that I've ever known that didn't work at were council and commissioners. But usually they all work 35 to 40 hours a week across the state.
Well, I know we said nobody's to get a decrease.
56,492.80 is the number that comes to the calculator when using the average hourly rate for non-licensed, according to Wagner and Shield.
With how many?
56,492? That's 100, that, so, okay, and we're not, I don't really know how to think about this. Like, I'm struggling to think through why we would give more of a licensed rate, but you didn't. I mean, and I'm also struggling with if we did the same process, would these others be different as well? I mean, what if we're comparing 35-hour work weeks to 40-hour work weeks for all of these elected officials, and all of these would be a little higher?
I think all the elected officials in Henry County work 35. I don't know of any sheriff's department's different.
In Henry County, you said, or in
Yeah,
every
most
county?
all of us work 35 hours a week. You can
In
say,
every county, you're saying roughly?
let's put it this way.
Okay.
We say that they work 35 hours, but you guys know that most of the time I'm answering my phone after 4
Mhm.
o'clock, or I'm on a call, or I'm up
Yeah.
here. And every elected official, so you really can't say that we work 35 or 40 hours a week because we're always on call. We always answer our phones.
Right,
Which is,
that's exactly the point.
yeah,
of
and
the
they're excluded
conversation.
from overtime. And that's why I said last, whatever day it was, just because they can be excluded doesn't mean they should be excluded.
So this is my thought process, like, if we're gonna say this wage is just too low for Steve because he's such a great surveyor, I can be okay with that, but we've been saying we're not gonna look at individual person. What if the next election we get a lousy unlicensed surveyor?
There
And
needs to
we-
be a basis
There needs to be,
that we're
I,
not
so I'm,
picking winners and
sorry,
losers, so.
everyone.
That's why my basis was the FLSA
And that was based on 35.
as based on federal law.
can you explain that thinking
You
to
had
us
an hourly
again,
rate.
even though you
Well,
already
the-
have, I know?
The chief deputies
Mhm.
would make the bare minimum
And
to
then you
not,
did it by the 85% up
to
it.
not be impacted by the FLSA rule, which means they would not get paid overtime. With that bare minimum is 58,656. And if we calculate them to be 90% of the elected department head,
Mhm.
that number comes out to be, I'll have to calculate it, it's 64,000 or 65,000.
So we're going from 85 to 90 based on FLSA.
We're going from 85 to 90 based on trying to get the wages closer. If we kept it at 85%, we would have to pay the elected officials higher because we're basing the chief deputies on the 58,656. So if we said we were gonna do 85%, that would be higher yet.
Did we make a decision on the whole exempt, non-exempt in
Does
that
this,
category?
and does this strategy correct the GIS and human resources positions being higher than their supervisors?
It, pretty darn close, yes. If we were to do 85%, elected officials would have to be paid 69,000, elected department heads, $69,070.
It's way over what Addie's suggesting though.
Yep.
If we paid them 90%, it would be 65,173. And that's the number that I suggested last Wednesday. That's every elected department head, and I believe there's 6 of them. 65,173.
We got the money, let's just.
Chief
spend it
deputy
all.
was 58,656.
I don't think anyone's trying to spend it all this week. My
That's my opinion.
Okay. Um,
When in doubt, go the highest.
Kyle, you gonna talk to us?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay.
I think philosophically, it makes sense for a chief deputy to be exempt under those numbers. And I think it makes sense to pay, especially when you look at justification on our elected officials, how many years of service they've had in as department heads in their respective roles. You know, that's something, those numbers could be revisited also in the future if the council chose to, based on somebody not running for election again or not getting through a primary. So those salaries can be set based on things we know and calculated that way. So I believe it makes sense philosophically. It's just a matter of money. Can we afford to do that? That's what it all comes down to in all of these situations.
Betsy, do you have anything brilliant?
No, I concur with Kyle's logic. I think it's mainly a matter of what can we afford.
Apparently, there's no limit.
So what, instead of saying that, why don't you tell us what you think it should be? Because
I know
that's
that
more
DLGF,
helpful.
they're gonna cut us. We're not looking at any cuts whatsoever. Everything that's been suggested, we've told hardly anyone no to anything.
But what do you want for these numbers?
I want,
Do you want the surveyor to stay at the,
I already said a minimum of 2%, but that was
okay,
discarded. So I said nobody should get it. No one except council should remain the same. But I don't agree with the 90%. I think we're deviating from what we have not really made a decision to exempt or not exempt on page 15 of those that are going to fall below the 58. We're just saying, let's give them the 58 and make no other decision. And then go back and make the officials 10% higher than the minimum that we just raised for this group of 12 people. We're just saying yes to everything. And it goes against my grain philosophically. We 180 degrees turned from balancing a budget to, we've got the money, we pass the money, let's spend it. And say no to nothing.
we are balancing according to what we actually think we're gonna take in this year.
I
I
said
mean,
it.
that's the whole, I'm not gonna pass a budget that's more than I think we're gonna
Well.
take in. Well, when I say,
It includes.
well, if you let me
yeah.
answer your question, I'll answer your question. It includes additional receipts that we're expecting, the interest income, the supplemental income. And so we're balancing to what we actually expect to get this year.
And yes, all of the wage increases that were put in were calculated in on this. I think there's an extra one of these up here if you'd like that.
Well,
Does that also include workman's comp if it's, when it goes up? What we're balancing out?
It's all in the budget, yeah.
You've already figured that in then.
We looked at insurance,
So
it's there, I just.
let me,
wanted-
let me explain this sheet real quick.
Does everybody have that sheet?
I believe you do. It was put on your spot prior to
Okay, I covered it up there.
your arrival, if not.
What's the title, Shannon?
Multi-colored one.
This is the summary of 2025
I got
budget
the others.
projections.
I just don't have that one.
The PDF.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you. I did not.
So the very, I won't go through all of it, but the first line to the left is the beginning cash balance. The blue area is the 2025 budget as including all of the dollars that come out of every file that Debbie has sent to us to date. The orange area is receipts as projected by Baker Tilly. And then the ending balance there, you can see the end, what the ending balance would be and how those numbers are projected to reflect, what Baker Tilly had. So knowing Baker Tilly does not include our lit changes, and knowing that, they under projected what our interest income would be, that green area shows what we believe we will actually receive, including interest income, as well as additional, certified shares and supplemental lit in the general fund, and the public safety in the corrections facility, the jail, PSAP, judicial, and EMS. All those are highlighted in red in that green area. And where the budget gets dicey in that green area is what the highway has budgeted, because we have not projected any revenue for matching grant funds from community crossings or federal aid in those highway areas. So if you look at that green area, it shows that we are, still overspending by $1.6 million. But if I remove the highway areas, that's that purple area far to the right, then we are, budgeting much closer with we are actually still have over $600,000 that we would
Yeah.
not have budgeted.
And have we finished going through each budget to see what,
We have not, and
we haven't, I
if
mean,
you look at public safety lit, we have receipts estimated in there of $2.476 million, and we have only budgeted 1.5. So we've got some changes to do in public safety lit, and that includes pulling some dollars out of the general fund and moving them to public safety lit that we need to get done. So, and we also have some dollars in the general fund that we need to allocate to the judicial lit. That was passed for that reason. We haven't done that yet. So if we move dollars where we could or should move dollars, I really think we have not over budgeted at all.
I agree.
There's a big difference between negative 1.6 million and 630,000, so there's a chasm there.
That's just highway.
I know.
Everything highway. And I looked back at their budgets, and I looked at that spreadsheet that Joe gave us for bridges, and there was over $800,000 of additional income coming in from community crossings
Right.
for
We've got-
bridges, and so there's others. That's why I excluded the
Right.
highway department
We've,
stuff.
we've received community crossings, I think, 4 out of the last 5 years. So it's a pretty good bet, and he's gone after federal this year, which is unusual because of the hoops we talked about. Well, I said, we got the money, so why cut anything? I would have liked the 10% raise over 2 years, but I'm outvoted.
Talk into your mic, Carol, so they can hear you on the, if you guys don't talk in your mic, hit your little button there in the front. Because they can't hear you on the screen if you don't. There you go, you're good.
Thank you.
You don't, yeah, just hit it. You don't have
Yeah,
to.
just
There you
as
go.
long as the screen hits on.
Oh, that's,
Technology.
yeah. So what was your final decision on what to pay the,
The elected department heads,
And we
Right.
didn't.
we haven't made a final decision yet. We're happy to hear what you are thinking.
okay, on the surveyor's office? You haven't come up with that decision.
We have not.
I'm having trouble hearing.
You know,
Yeah. We'll try to talk louder.
Well, yeah, but,
Yeah, it's echoey and,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think just make a motion on 14.3% and the majority goes.
Raise?
I'm still, yeah.
Okay.
I'm
I-
still not sure how I feel about it.
I'm really trying hard not to consider anything about I'm trying to be objective, using numbers. But what sways me off the fence is Wagner, Irwin, Shealy. If we start picking and choosing what part of Wagner, Irwin, Shealy we're going to agree with, we're picking winners and losers, and why pay them $40,000 if we're going to go against their recommendations? So I think the safest thing to do this year is to follow their advice.
How many people do they have working in the surveyor's office?
Just two. Same
Okay.
as most counties with our
Okay.
size, yeah.
Well, what I'm getting at, one of the ladies, I can't think of her name, called me this morning and wanted to talk to me tomorrow. And I don't know if she knew we were meeting today or not.
Most people do.
So I'm just wondering what she was getting at.
Well, that probably.
The pay
Their
for,
budget, their budget.
the pay for the
I
head
don't
of the
know.
department and the other person.
I don't know. I can always
Yeah.
speculate, and I'd really rather not talk personalities, but I don't know.
I think Steve does a great job, and I know he has a really small department. But we continue to say we're not going to evaluate anyone's performance or look at the number of similar tasks that they're doing. So that makes me lean away from changing it. But when I look at the numbers also, I see that this surveyor, their numbers are really everywhere in
Yeah, they are.
in Randolph County. The surveyor makes the same as the assessor.
But are they full?
I'm just looking at
Part-time.
non-licensed and they look like full-time wages to me. So surveyor, same as assessor, same in Randolph, they're the same. But then like in Marshall County, the surveyor makes 20,000 less than the assessor. 10,000 less in Madison County, same as the assessor in Hancock, same as Fayette. And 20,000 less in DeKalb County, DeKalb, how do you say it? DeKalb, thank you, DeKalb County. So I honestly don't know.
Susan, I agree with what you're saying, but I also see it that each department head has to make decisions for his department. Regardless of what they're in charge of, they still have to make major decisions for their department. They still have people that have to answer to them and,
Are you talking about my comment about a smaller department?
yes.
That was me saying he might be overworked. So that was me thinking the opposite of what you thought I was thinking. I'm saying
be.
from one perspective, he does a ton of work, he does a good job, so he deserves, but then
Right,
on
and
the other hand.
that's what I'm leaning towards.
Those are the things that we keep saying we're not gonna look at. We're not gonna pay Debbie more because she let go of people. We're not gonna pay Jenny more because she let go of people. So I'm just honestly struggling to think about it the most fair way.
Well, and I agree with you on that on the fairway, but I also see that each department head has different things, that each department deals with different things. And, if we don't sit down and determine everything that each department deals with, how can we say that one department deserves more than another?
That's what Addie just did.
We paid
That's above
Wagner
my
and
pay
Shealy to-
grade because
to
that
do
would mean I
exactly
would know
that.
exactly the details of everyone.
On the fence, I'm going to lean on her recommendation.
Oh, yeah. Kyle?
Yeah, a couple things about the surveyor, with the statute in place, the idea behind that from a policy standpoint, with the change in salary, if you're a registered or licensed surveyor, was to try to incentivize licensed surveyors to run for election. And I just want to share some of the simple data, $106,000 a year. I think that's what the Surveyors Association said, average salary for a surveyor is. So I think it's unlikely that a licensed surveyor would run for the elected county surveyor spot. But again, like I mentioned earlier, that could be addressed down the road. I think it's also worth pointing out that the surveyor is, I think, the only position where there is a specific statute that deals with pay. I may be wrong, but I think that that's correct. And I don't think, even though it's an incentive to try to get a licensed surveyor to run, I think that, there's an argument to be made that it's been used as more of a way to make the salary less for surveyors across the state. I think that's an argument that could be made. So those are a couple of thoughts. Also in regards to, chief deputies, hell, in my opinion, we could punish Steve Rust as much as we want to on his salary, but whatever he makes, that dictates also in a lot of situations what Ruth makes. And then I don't know, the question is that equitable in comparison to all the other chief deputies? And that's just the crux of the situation we've got right now.
If I'm not mistaken, I don't sit on job classification, but hers was looked at 2 years ago and it was increased because it was reclassified. Am I wrong? It seems like that was.
I think she's still at 80, I think she's 82% currently.
Well, I mean,
She
her
was,
job
I
classification was.
think she did that when I was still, like, maybe my last year of clerk, first year of auditor, so
We came on the same year.
18, 19, somewhere in there, that, she was changed to a chief deputy.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
So
There
that,
was an adjustment because there was a realization she was lower.
Yeah, and
By
she's it.
far.
I mean, she does everything. There's
But
nobody to
one
cover
of the-
her.
right,
One of the things that Kyle mentioned is we got all these elected officials who put in 20, 30 years. They're near retirement. They're going to be replaced with people that could be 5, 10 years. Are they still going to get this 65,000 with
If
no
anybody
experience?
decides to run for that office at a fraction of the wages, that's part of the problem, right? There's no incentive to run for an elected office.
And even if this is just from me coming into an office that I had zero training in, even though I had been an elected official for a really long time. I had zero training walking in here. You know that but it doesn't matter how much, when you go in as elected official, it doesn't matter how many years you have behind you. It's a huge learning curve. I mean, I
Right.
went in
Oh,
as
yeah.
treasurer, I went in as clerk, and here, it's a huge learning
Sure.
curve. So it doesn't really matter how much experience you have walking in that office.
Now Jay's going to have a learning curve too.
Yeah, yeah, walking in that office, it doesn't matter how much experience you had. It's gonna help you a little bit, but you still have a huge learning curve.
so what about
Kind of
the?
with what she just said, I'm name glad dead. So, I mean, what's the difference between what a licensed surveyor does and what Steve does? I mean, is it a license? So, I mean, what he
I
does
think the only
in the
thing would
surveyor's
be
office in Henry County, what's the
signing and
difference?
Stamping drawings is be the only.
Yeah, he can't go out and do the surveying. He has to hire somebody to go out and do the
Yeah.
surveying.
He might even be able to do some of the field collection data and even put together drawings, but he's not a licensed surveyor. He cannot sign and stamp drawings, so that's probably outsourced. But I don't know how much of that we actually do.
That's part of this budget, isn't it?
Well,
Hire out,
Yeah.
contract out.
But I don't think it's very much.
That's kind of why I asked that question. So how much does he do differently than what a licensed surveyor, how often does he
You know,
do it?
Without performance evaluation, which was voted down, how do we as council know that?
But then again, in turn, how can we determine his salary with that just because?
Is what we paid. them
Well,
back then.
And
Do
you
you-
can't do an evaluation on an elected official.
What
So-
they're-
So how can we determine how we pay him just because he doesn't have a license to do one thing that we might do once a year?
Well, that's what Wagner and Shealy did. It's just the same as you pay a doctor a lot more than, a practical nurse. But they have 8 years of college. You pay the engineer more than you do a highway superintendent because of the degree. If we don't do that, why are there any colleges? Why do we tell people to go to college if you're not expecting to make more? The Department of Labor says you're gonna make $1 million more going to college than. Well, yeah, well, you probably do, because that's the way health is set up.
So
But-
here's a hypothetical. We were just talking the other day about how auditors' wages are gonna have to go up. So what happens if they are we just gonna continue to raise everyone together, even if it looks like the auditor position is demanding a higher wage than the others?
The 65,000 number I gave was actually higher than midpoint from what we've collected. And I said last week that I think that group of elected officials, and by association, the chief deputies, are the ones that fail to fight for themselves. They do not barter for their own wages. They work their tails off and they fight to get the wages of their employees up. They come to job classification. They ask for sometimes what seems like the impossible, like last June. And it was only impossible because we didn't have the right structure in place. But those wages, and I would suggest in the overwhelming majority of the counties that we compare to, those by default do not barter for their own wages.
Well, that's
So-
kind of in the affective and.
But what
making
happens
choices,
in
we
a
don't
few
know that
years
for
when
sure. It may well be the case, but we don't know that for sure.
in a year or two, the auditor could be over the 65 and then
We need to look at.
At that point, Susan, it would likely be based on probably a statutory addition, which outlines some scope for services. So that would just, in my opinion, you could consider that as if you're looking for basis. I can't remember who mentioned it earlier. What's the basis to deviate from a standardized report? The basis would be the state through the legislature told us that we had to do this. I think that would be the basis. No offense, Debbie. Not that we wouldn't want to do it. I'm just saying.
There's some professional associations that have made great inroads in their.
And
their
the auditors is
membership.
one of them that have lobbied. And that's why if you look at what we're seeing here, auditors' wages
Mhm.
have gone up
they're higher.
comparatively to the other ones, and that's okay.
Well,
Can I ask a question about the surveyor position? Just for clarification. So I know Steve is not licensed. Um, if I remember correctly, somebody earlier in this conversation said that it's nearly impossible to get licensed in Indiana, or there's no course offerings?
there's not anymore,
Okay. Do we know how long that's been the case?
few years. Purdue was the last one several years ago.
And has Steve ever expressed an interest in becoming licensed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So what
I
we
know he
got
goes
now
to
is
all
not
the
licensed.
all the classes that he needs to take certifications, to get certain
Steve
certifications.
is not licensed.
So he's
Steve
not-
is
he
not
does do a lot
licensed,
of
as many are not.
What
They're,
did she
Stuff like
call
that.
it?
huh?
What she was calling
Yeah.
it.
I just feel like if he's had the opportunity, and I realize not at the moment, but if he'd had the opportunity in the past and didn't express interest in it, that sort of influences the way, well, it makes me think a little bit differently.
If he did, he'd have to go out of state, or I doubt if that's a course you can do correspondence or through Purdue Global.
Right, but he didn't take advantage of it while it was available, so,
I don't think he ever had intention to, but you'd have to ask him.
sure,
He ran knowing that he doesn't have it, and I doubt if he had intentions of it.
sure. Kyle, do you have any insight on that?
I think he's proven his ability.
Absolutely, and I don't mean to say he doesn't do a great job, I just,
And then
That's it.
nobody punish anybody.
absolutely, no.
I heard that term, but I don't think that's what Kyle meant.
I was stepping out to go fill up my water bottle. I missed the last part of that, Betsy, after you said if he had the opportunity.
Yeah, I was just asking, you're his liaison, correct?
Yeah,
So have you ever heard him express interest in becoming licensed?
no, I've never heard him express that
It's only
interest.
fair that we would let Steve answer that instead of us
We could
assuming.
Yeah.
That's true. I think that even if he wanted to, that challenge would be extremely difficult in the state of Indiana. It would be extremely difficult, and I don't know if he would or not, but you're right, Debbie, that's a question for Steve.
Right. If I were him,
So-
I wouldn't.
We probably are gonna need to just
I'd like.
vote, but I do see several counties where all the elected officials are the same. I see several counties where they're all the same, except the auditor is higher. So if, I will probably, I don't have a strong opinion about this. I don't want to slight Steve, but I think we end up, yeah, risking, sliding the auditor in this scenario, but, and Debbie is only going to be the auditor for 2 more years. So I'm thinking, just talking in general about the position, but
I know some elected officials have asked me, why aren't we paying all elected officials the same? And I said, there's only a handful of counties doing that, and none of the counties that I think Wagner and Shealy compares us with, the 14, do that. I mean,
Delaware County does.
yeah.
Hancock County does, yes, Hancock County does. And Jackson County does, and Lawrence does, no,
Oh,
Lawrence
okay.
does not. And it looks like Madison does, except the auditor is a little bit higher. So
Just somebody,
I'm not opposed to making them all the same if that's more of the consensus. I don't,
we made a decision to go 97% of midpoint Wagner, Irwin, Shealy. I'd really like to suggest highly we stick with that.
Susan, I think what you said about making them all the same is correct. I mean, because I think, in my opinion, if we're only going to pay Steve's chief deputy based on what he makes, does that make her job less? Does she do less than everybody, all the other chief deputies?
no
And
one's
I just think
arguing
that's-
that someone does less.
Well-
It's just, I mean, we have this report and we're trying to decide if we're going, certainly I don't think she does less.
I mean,
I'm
it
not-
doesn't, exactly, maybe
But
not. that's
by the
accurate.
same token, we're not evaluating anyone's workload with this report. We're just
But she still has the
evaluating.
title of chief deputy. I guess that's the fairest way of saying it.
I agree, and she's being paid according to our current standards, and we're talking about if we're gonna change them.
Because I think by
so.
the time we put all what Wagner, Irwin, Shealy, she's gonna be right at what, $8,300 less than the highest paid chief deputy.
Mhm. Yeah, it's an issue for sure. I get it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm not gonna make a motion, but I'll vote when someone else does. I
I
don't
make a
know.
motion, we table this and discuss it further.
Oh, my goodness.
This part of this.
Excuse me.
move on to another topic, is that? your
Discuss it
suggestion?
when? We got to get a budget passed.
We have to get a
when?
budget passed. We have to do this and it takes a lot of time. And I understand you want to table it, but you also have to look at our side of it.
Well, if somebody wants to make a motion, yes, please. How appropriate.
I'm going to insert my 2 cents.
This color okay? Well, you got 2 for the price of 1.
Ooh, here, you want one back? No.
We're good.
Hold on, Billy. I'm gonna throw one.
Right now, somebody's throwing a buoy at us.
Candy.
Keep us
Yeah, you
afloat.
got me. He threw some candy at you.
On the floor.
Have you guys still got me?
We're ready, Kyle.
Okay. I'm just gonna throw this 2 cents out. I know I pay my financial advisor to do certain things for my personal life. We have financial advisors. I'd be curious what our financial advisors thought about, no offense to the numbers that have been crunched by various people in the council, but if they thought that our assumptions were within the true scope of what we believe them to be. I think that would be a exercise that was very worthwhile.
Wrong bounce. Whatever the motion is by whoever, I just encourage us not to deviate from the $40,000 we paid from Wagner, Irwin, Shealy very often and very much. Because whatever deviation we made, there's gonna be somebody ticked and they're gonna come, what, you need to make an exception for me too, and that's what we've heard for you. Or we can do Mike's suggestion and move on and come back to this topic, not that we don't do it today. But we're not
Well,
making.
I think we move on and come back to the topic, see what else we got to cover real quick.
Well, you're the second one, so Mike said it, yeah, because we're spinning our wheels. What else do we have that we need to really pin down? Did we handle probation? Did we handle the,
I still need to talk about the sheriff's request
yeah, go
and
ahead.
pass it along.
Go ahead.
So I've been talking with the sheriff and I wanted to communicate his concern and see if anyone wants to entertain it, which is to consider a higher market average for the merit pools because of the expense to train them. And the sheriff has talked probably to all of us, but again to me about the expense to train merit polls because they have to go through the academy, which isn't necessarily that expensive, but then they have to ride with another officer for a very long time. So it ends up being a huge sunk cost every time we lose someone. And so I'm offering this up to see if anyone is interested in mitigating those training costs by trying to get the merit holes to a higher average market level.
I know last year we increased the matrix a lot, but that doesn't do the front end. That doesn't kick in until 5 years, right?
Right, he's most interested, or at least very interested in these new deputies they bring into training and not losing them immediately after they complete their training.
I think he's gonna lose fewer after getting a 17.5% raise. That's my opinion.
Susan and I have already talked about this, so she's heard me say this, but I would really like to see hard numbers from the sheriff's office about how many deputies we've lost after they've been through the academy, what it costs to put them through the academy, just to get a sense of how painful this is for the county, not to mention all the time and resources wasted on hiring and just all of it. So if the sheriff could give us some monetary examples and data, to me, that would be really helpful.
Do you have any comment, Jay?
The loss of employees after completion of the academy can be very significant in the training of them. I don't recall in the past seeing large numbers leave once they graduated in the first 2 or 3 years. I guess you would have to take into account how long did they stay? Have we lost them immediately in the first year? Yes, we have. Matter of fact, I know that they're losing a young man here in the very near future that Sheriff McCorkle hired right prior to the end of his term as sheriff. So that's fairly quick turnover and loss of that officer.
I wonder if that'll change when 49,000 goes to 60,000.
And conversely, do we know if the sheriff's department has considered any type of training and employment agreement where if you leave within a certain period of time, you have to repay the department for training expenses? I know that's done in some places. I don't know if our sheriff's department's considered that at all.
Sheriff's rules about that because Shannon suggested that, and he feels like he's not really in a good bargaining position with the wage. You know, if you lock someone into a contract, you have to offer them a more competitive wage. So that was the thought process.
We did it in my office.
It happens in EMS when they send you to paramedic school. Newcastle has several that have completed, and their wages are average wages. If they leave before a certain amount of time, they do have to pay back their training.
They do
A
have-
certain percentage, yes, they do. Henry County EMS is the same way. When they send you to and if they pay for it, you are signing. Wayne Township Fire, same way.
How does that compare to, the way John was saying it was the cost of the academy wasn't as significant as the time of like probationary period? Do you know anything about? the
I don't,
probationary period for
all I know
EMS?
is if after they send you, I don't know the exact time frame, so I won't speak specifics because I don't want to speak out of turn. But I do know that every EMS, I won't say every EMS service, but most EMS services, same way. I think my sister had to stay at least, and again, I may be getting my numbers wrong. I think it was at least 3 years at Wayne Township after they paid for her training, or she'd have had to pay it back.
Do you know how long she had to work with somebody else? mean, you know what I mean?
They have to precept. I don't know. They do have to precept. When they come out of school, you have to precept, you have to do your clinicals, you have to work with other people. I don't know those. I'm just saying that there are other
There's still a
emergency
training period,
services
yeah.
that when there is training involved, they do have to pay
Right.
them back.
It sounds like we have examples of this in the auditor's office and in Henry County EMS. Are those contracts that you guys developed or the commissioners? It's a policy?
Part of their hiring process. Mandy can give you more information, and I'm sure Brian Clark can as well. I don't know about what yours
Brian
is.
Clark in the Newcastle EMS works under a union contract, I believe, right?
You will have to, I'm not
I
going to
believe
answer,
it's-
but I do know that they do require that if you,
Part of a collective bargaining agreement, I think.
and again,
it's-
all I'm talking about is their training. I don't know about their salaries or
I
collective
guess
bargaining.
if we could find some examples of it and find out, maybe that's a question for Joel.
You can talk to Mandy.
So Brian Clark says he's watching. We do contract for 2 years after we pay. After we pay, you go to school. There's something with the police that limits what they can contract since the academy is paid by ticket revenue. So yes, if they don't stay at EMS for 2 years, they have to pay it back. The city.
So that's an option that we can consider for the sheriff's office, in my
Right.
opinion.
I think, the point of pay is to be fair and competitive, so just wanted to communicate John's concern to make sure he's keeping people as he hires them. So is there anyone, Betsy said she might want more information. Is there anyone else who's interested in considering raising the average market wage for merit polls to improve retention?
No,
I am not.
I'd kind of like to see what we're losing when they're leaving, whether they're leaving right after the academy or 6 months after the academy or 5 years after the academy.
Okay.
I think that would be an important part to determine.
Yeah,
What do you
so
think?
I won't be sitting here next year, but I can communicate that to John, that if he has turnover information or other concerns with retention, that, go ahead.
Brian says he is not union and Joel wrote the contracts for him to sign.
So we can get
Okay.
some sort of a template for the contract that we could make it work, and we can ask Joel about that. Harold, what are your thoughts on the merit poll wages?
On the what?
On the merit poll, the road deputies' wages and the leadership?
Well. Naturally, pardon. I do believe, of course, that your seniority means a lot. And your training. Well, myself, I feel like that they got more seniority, they got more training, experience, and definitely deserve.
Sure. And the leadership would get the 97% out there, just like everybody would get 97% of their midpoint. The only one we cannot control is the sheriff, as is mandated by state
I think
law.
it's more than.
So 97% is more than fair.
Kyle? You still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think I would want to know more hard data, and I can understand and that the experience of somebody being lost is probably more valuable than the actual compensation piece, but it would at least be a step to do some form of mitigation in a situation like that. So I think I agree with what Betsy said about seeing some of that raw data if possible. That would help me too.
Okay.
And just to piggyback off of that, I think having contracts that with the deputies that, hey, if we put you through ILEA, you're going to need to stay with us for a certain amount of time or you're going to pay that back. I think that's a great idea potentially and maybe a good compromise.
I agree. If it's possible, and it sounds like there's precedent elsewhere doing that,
Is there precedent
I
in the
don't know if
sheriff's
I
office
don't
or
know.
just an email? Yeah,
that needs
I
to
don't
be
either.
researched.
I don't know.
I don't know either. but it's certainly something we need to
Right.
consider.
I'm sure the answer's out there. What next? We know we can't do anything with the Cume Bridge because that deadline passed, but we're gonna do anything with the park, and were there any updates relating to the park? Because we had some loose ends last week.
I think the only loose end we had related to the park was related to adjusting the levy that we had discussed. And
That was
Debbie-
my question, to
Debbie
see
sent us
what we
some
were gonna
information.
do.
I texted the council, no, I texted two of you who was in the loop on this. Saw Jason Simler up in Moreland. He said, of course, as we discussed, the Cume Bridge deadline's up. He says, I'm not sure about the park. That's a Paige thing. She deals with those tax levies. And she would get with one of us, and I didn't get anything today. So Paige was gonna work on that. I planted a seed with Baker Tilly that is something we are exploring. But I thought Casey said she was going to, still had some money to cut, but she wasn't there yet, and she was gonna maybe handle that through text or emails. Does anybody have anything?
I have a question, just an organizational question. Are we trying to complete each budget one at a time today? And looking at the
That'd be
park budget
wonderful.
and,
Up to date? No. We can go
I mean,
back
I'm
there.
just,
We can do that.
we
Just-
didn't decide about the wages yet, so I was just trying to think if it's just discussion or if we're actually.
I've just had a list of
Yeah.
loose ends.
To
is
me, the
what-
whole budget is a loose end because we didn't finish any of the funds for the most part.
Well,
Can I ask 3 questions that we had? Are we adding 3 additional correctional officers at the jail?
I didn't hear you.
Are we adding 3 correctional officers at the jail when we go
What
by,
prompts that question?
looking at the budgets just to make sure?
They said they weren't adding any.
Okay, it was on the Wagner, because it was the same, those
those
were
are-
the same
Those are
as,
just promotions. They're not
okay,
additional.
so we are not,
positions.
okay.
Well, inside the sheriff's office versus inside the jail are both
Are
different.
we doing lieutenant and corporals within the jail? Or is that just for merit deputies?
I didn't
He
hear
said
that.
both were gonna be the same, right?
I think so. The leadership structure will be the same in both.
Okay, because I think we need to go back then and look at,
I can't remember. I can go look at the.
yeah,
Wagner.
well, that was our question. I think we need to go back and look at that. Are we giving the full-time position to EMS? The new position they requested? And I don't think that was decided.
Yeah. That should be on the list too for positions to discuss.
And are we leaving the stipends for the prosecutor's pay that he put into his perpetuation fund?
That was what, when I mentioned prosecutor, I said probation, I meant
Did we change the
prosecutor.
wages to be 97%?
Yes,
And
we
we should
did.
keep
Then
that
we
in the
should
general
remove
fund.
those out of those.
Okay,
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, thanks for asking that.
Absolutely fantastic questions.
Yes. Any more
Thanks, Debbie.
absolute fantastic questions?
So you're doing great. What should we do next?
what'd you say?
What should we do next? You're doing great.
I don't know.
Those are
I
the,
think that we just need to go back and start with one of the budgets,
I do
Okay.
too.
whichever one, and see if you can finish one at a time.
Well, I think we can, but the big outstanding one in my mind is the public safety lit.
yes, I agree with
And
that.
I think we're ready to finish and adjust the safety and jail lit and EMS lit.
Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, let me find my email because
Yeah,
it's
that's
pretty,
what I'm that's what I'm looking for. You did a lot of work on
pretty complex.
that. Yes, I agree with that statement.
I can't hear for some reason
I-
down there.
yeah,
So
acoustics
it's
are
just
in.
like a whirlwind of noise.
It is.
Because he didn't use his mic.
I can't even know what I said.
Shannon, when you pull up the spreadsheet, you show us which spreadsheet you're looking at.
All right, I'm looking, hold on. And I sent an email with some recommendations, so hold on.
This is from last Thursday, I think, right? You're referencing the one you had on last week.
That was when Shannon was
So,
calculating. with
yeah, so
Christie.
I'll read this email. And
When did you send it?
I sent it on Thursday, 8/8.
Okay, that's the one I printed off.
So it basically says, based on the email sent, we would, should be looking at $2.476 million in total public safety lit revenue, and that based on those spreadsheets that are laying right in front of us. By my calculations, the total merit poll wages, including overtime and specialty pay, will be 2.212 million. That's pretty close based on the numbers that we saw today. If we put all of that into public safety lit, it won't leave any room for sheriff vehicles. And if I heard correctly, you guys moved jail maintenance to public safety, which I looked through the jail lit budget, and I think jail maintenance is still in jail lit right now. So that's $250,000, I believe, that needs to be moved over to public safety. Based on the email, I also think we would be looking at 2.548 million in total jail lit revenue. If we remove the 250K in jail maintenance and the 38K in jail uniforms, that leaves jail lit at 2.584 million. And that's just $36,000 over what I believe we would likely to collect. Since we have to keep 2.579 million in the balance, I'm hoping we have some of the budgeted dollars in inmate medical or utilities left at the end of the year. And based on the information that I've shown on this sheet, it would appear we have $2.605 million left in ending balance, which would cover what we have to have for the bond payment. Total public safety budget right now is $1.5 million. We had the 250,000 from jail maintenance, that's 1.75 million. And this says, what if we consider moving from the sheriff's budget, the line for wages for the sheriff, chief deputy, corporals, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains, all to public safety? I believe that will be approximately $1.2 million.
Did you mean 2.2 for that, or did I misunderstand?
That's
what you-
1.2 because that does not include
The-
all of the road
The
deputies.
road deputies are out of.
If we put every one of their wages over there, that would be 2.12 million
Okay.
or 2.212. So approximately $1.2 million is the leadership
Okay.
in the merit polls. And we move vehicle maintenance, 150,000 out of the sheriff's budget to public safety. We move sheriff's retirement back to the sheriff's budget. And that would have a net impact on the general fund of $750,000. And that would leave the public safety lit budget at $2.516 million, which would be over budgeted by about $40,000. And based on the calculations that I have on this sheet, we would still have a balance of $1.68 million in public safety at the end of 2025. So there are dollars there.
Could you repeat everything you just said?
Without reading it word for word.
I'm not finding that email.
So Shannon, are you going to leave the benefits in the commissioner's budget, or would you move the benefits
We would
in-
leave benefits in the commission.
in the commissioner's budget? Okay.
That's the narrative of,
You can look at your,
that's the narrative of this stuff, right?
Yes.
I printed it all.
well, that
And
one.
it- Well, no, it has a few assumptions.
That's the assumptions and that's how I calculated. This one was sent after that one you have printed off in your hand, Kenny.
Says what if
Okay.
from the sheriff, so by line, Shannon's saying from the sheriff's budget, we'll move the merit pool leadership wages of 1.2 million, vehicle maintenance of 156,000 into that safety lit, plus jail maintenance of 250,000.
And then we moved the 589 for sheriff's retirement
Wow.
back to the sheriff's budget, which is where it was prior to 2016.
Do you have those suggestions on a spreadsheet or just
No,
narrative?
just narrative.
So, so 1.2, because I think I'm missing a few line items. So the 1.2 for the merit pool, wages plus 156 for public safety, or sorry, for vehicle maintenance, and then 250,000 for jail maintenance.
Yep.
So what else? Because that's only 1.6. What else is in there that you're leaving, or what else?
There's 1.5 million in there already.
Right.
So we're
So you're
pulling,
not taking those other
I'm
things.
pulling 0.589 out.
Okay. You're
That's
leaving
it,
the rest
leaving
of
everything
what's
else
there.
in there.
Okay.
Well, we all have to agree, so. Yeah, if we take sheriff's retirement out, and then we would move the sheriff's wages and all of the other leadership, lieutenants, sergeants, captains, corporals, the whole thing, all their wages into public safety.
This was
And then,
left
no,
straight.
leave everything else in there. Just take the sheriff's retirement out. And, we also need to take 250 out of jail maintenance, 250K out of jail maintenance and put it in public safety. And if my calculations are close to correct, that would get public safety lit budget at close to 2.516 million. And we budgeted the public safety lit based on a 0.25 public safety lit rate, and we increased that. So, and I know we don't have those estimates yet, and you said we'd get those on the 16th or something. So I did my best guess, and that's what these pages are. Yeah, the other two pages that are these woods with the green. The one with no blue on it is exactly what our income tax in estimates would be, in my opinion, if we had not changed any of the lit rates. The other one with the blue at the top is including changes based on our lit changes. And for those listening, that included the average certified shares increase of 4.82%. It included also a negative 26.12% change in the supplemental lit based on what we understand we're going to be receiving from that law passed in 2022. So both of those things were offset though by increases in public safety lit, the EMS lit, and the judicial lit. So, and then the numbers that you see on this page all reflect the changes that you see on this page.
So Shannon, I know you're saying you leave sheriff vehicles because we had talked about different things.
Leave sheriff
Okay.
vehicles in there, yes.
All right. And the only other line item that I think we might have gone too far down is secure beds. We budgeted as spent so far, but maybe that just to.
We
say
changed that
might-
from 300 to 150, right?
Yeah.
And I just paid for the month of July was 48.15, I think, is what I just. paid. $4,815 was the month of July. That was to Pendleton. That was the one just
That
to
all of
Pendleton.
July, I mean,
That was
just
all of
Pendleton.
July. Yeah, but it was just, that was,
because the average was. what,
and
12,000
usually,
a month?
yeah, at least right around in there.
Does that deviate much, or has it been stable lately? 'Cause previous years that deviated a
So
lot.
Shannon, can you tell me? the
It's way
total
higher than it's ever been in the
that
past.
change hits for safety lit?
That the total increase,
Total amount at the end about. the-
2.512 million, or I'm sorry, 2.516 million.
Okay. Okay. Which is slightly over what we were.
Oh, maybe that. It's apparently on a long string.
And then in my estimation, that was about a $750,000 impact to the general fund. And then we still have $118,000 in judicial lit that we need to take out of the court budget somewhere that we
And-
can pay out of judicial lit.
And officially budget the 300,000 in the EMS lit. because we removed that from
Yes.
safety lit. We need to do that too.
When you
Yeah.
say court budget, which fund are we talking?
So on the
about?
judicial
We need
lit,
to
you're going to
decide.
have to decrease only salaries.
Correct. And so we need to look at which salaries and which budget we can do that with, and we could probably use your help.
Well, on the judicial, what I would say is it's 112,000. So, okay, divide that by 3, take it out of each one of the recorder, administrator, take it out of each one of their lines to
I'm,
decrease that.
I'm fine with
I
however it
think you know
works.
better than I do. I don't really have a strong.
We're still up in the air. We don't know how it's going to work. So we don't know
Right.
how that judicial lit actually is going to come into us. We don't know if we have a fund set up that we have to take it from. I don't
Or
know
if it comes in as a
if it comes in
credit
like,
against the.
yep.
Yeah, we don't know.
We're still up in the air. We don't know
So
how that
Can
would
we
come.
budget for a credit?
Right.
Yeah, well, I think that would be the best thing to do would be just to take it a third from each one of those lines, decrease them by that much.
Okay.
Because if it comes in a fund of its own, then we're gonna have to pay them out
Pay.
of that line, so it would all come out, yeah.
However is the best to do it as far as we're concerned.
I think that's the easiest way to do it.
You want to look at those budgets and tell us which lines need to be go to what?
So Kenan, I know we've talked a lot about balancing the budget. For the safety lit, we're about 39,000 over what we think we're going to get based on the revised estimates that Shannon worked through, and we have a pretty healthy balance. I do think that it would not be surprising if we dip more for secure beds. And then we may need to, well, you all will need to evaluate next year, but I think I'm okay with that 39,000, just so long as, I would think that this state might push back on these numbers if they don't consider the tax increases. How does that work out with them? Because that would take us negative in the fund.
Right. I don't think it will take us negative in the fund because everything we look, that's just compared to what dollars coming in and we have a balance.
Even if they don't consider the increased tax revenue.
Oh, good question. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But they're calculating our tax revenue estimates now and we're gonna
So
get
they should have
official
them
updates from the
revised, okay.
state on the 16th.
Okay.
so.
I think then we'll be okay.
What did you decide on secured beds? Are we still at 150?
I'm-
I lost track of the
I
conversation.
like it left at 115. If we need to add to it, we will.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what other changes did you make? Because I wasn't following, I have it now, but I wasn't following your narrative.
So we moved 250K from jail maintenance out of the jail lit to public safety lit.
Jail maintenance.
Moved 250,000 out of jail maintenance into, from the jail lit into public safety lit. And then we're going to add, you're gonna add all those positions of leadership. And my estimate is that's gonna be $1.2 million. It should be really close.
And that's in public safety?
Yes, we're gonna move it out of sheriff's budget and into public safety.
Okay.
We're also gonna move $150,000. I'm using round numbers, Debbie, so that jail or that motor vehicle maintenance in the sheriff's budget is right at $156,000 somewhere. Sheriff's 005 budget. Motor vehicle maintenance, 156,000.
And the sheriff was the,
625, and you're moving that to where?
Public safety lit.
and you're just talking about those offices where he would go into lieutenant.
Yes, all
corporal
those
and
positions.
All those,
So she'll have the exact dollar amounts.
and those are in 005.
Yes. And then the last item was to move the 589,000 sheriff's retirement out of public safety and put it back in 005. Yes. And then once that has been done, we can see exactly what the impact is on public safety lit.
That's what she's calculating. You didn't do a calculation on it?
I didn't have all the wages until just now.
Okay.
And
Oh, you're excused then.
it's easier to let her make the changes and let a
Right.
computer calculate it.
I'm so in awe of all these number crunching you've done. It just, you
If
know,
we're waiting for a second,
Sure.
if I take the jail budget that Debbie just sent and subtract out the jail maintenance,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't match exactly what you have on the sheet. Is there another?
The jail lit, let me look. There's 38,000 in uniforms that we removed the other day. That's also in this email.
that's a difference, you think?
No.
Hmm.
It's close. I mean, it's bouncing right around that number, but I'm just not getting it to, let me look at it more closely.
You know what they say?
And is there a typo in the PSAP lit line, Shannon? It's the one dropped off the,
Which line?
oh, never mind, never mind. Looking at the wrong thing.
So you're close to 38,000.
And what I see from the dollars we got, I got the jail lit, 1233 lit, still has 38,000 in uniforms in it right now.
Yeah, so we were gonna remove the uniforms and then move the jail maintenance to the safety lit,
Yep.
okay? But it's,
Where were the uniforms? Yeah.
38,000 was in jail lit. And we realized that those were duplicated when we had
Right.
our message with the sheriff the other day. And the 250,000 was moved from jail lit to public safety lit.
That was the jail maintenance.
And that brought our jail lit budget down to 2.548,
yeah,
something like that.
314.
2.584. Is that right?
2584314.
Yes.
You have it down to the penny.
No pennies.
That's 2.584 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
The deputies do not. Just the leadership.
36,000 more.
So,
than what we are
so yes, it,
22,326.
and that includes, has Ann given you all those positions? Yes. So the 1.2 million that I calculated includes all those positions. Okay, so it will be, the 1.2 I had was close and not knowing,
You can see that.
and I guess the other question is, does that include their
And
matrix?
this is what
Okay.
Shannon estimated. And then, you know, we worked together on this one.
Okay.
It was a little bit more interest, and then it's a higher, what's the 4.82, Paul? Because I'm spacing it.
That's the average of what the certified
The
shares
certified shares.
growth
Yeah.
over the last
Yeah.
5 years.
I'm just asking what the red was.
So-
She said changes to Baker Tilly's projections.
And I think that 4.82 is pretty conservative, so I actually feel really good about these numbers. The certified shares have been increasing with the exception of 2022. When they,
COVID.
right, so, you know, the last year was, 5.6, so I think that's a good estimate.
Okay.
And the only other thing is, adding in the supplemental lit that we might expect. Because when Baker Tilly gives us them, they are 0. So, and Shannon trended down. 26% down. But this was an interesting, I should be talking into the mic, but this was an interesting point too, that because the safety lit amount is increasing significantly, even though the trend down for, is trending down for supplemental, it's still gonna go up because the tax rate has gone up significantly.
Yeah,
So-
that all makes sense.
Yeah, I think I feel good about these numbers. So as long as we're hitting them pretty closely, I think we could expect to maintain that, 6 million that we're targeting.
Well, 6 million is what it is currently, so
Yeah,
if this comes to fruition, we're not really digging into the general fund
We sh-
balance much at
right.
all.
and we don't want to, really. I mean,
Ideally,
we don't want
yeah.
to add to it, but we don't really want to degrade it for operating
Yeah.
expenses, so.
Well, we've gone from 3 million to 4.5 million to 5 million to 6 million. I have no problem keeping it the same. But we're still not at 6 months running, but I don't know that we ever will be.
Yeah, so you got, once, that's why I said if we can, instead of putting all those that were sent to you just before you got here today into the sheriff's budget, let's put them into public safety lit. And then we will know how close we are. So I knew it was gonna be a estimate, educated estimate at best, but the one thing I could not, gauge was based on who, and so that I knew I was gonna be off by the matrix amount.
Well, thank you.
You give it away.
I know.
I'm just the,
I got a whole nother bag in my bags.
Yeah, you're,
Yeah, that's all right.
Shannon, you don't have anything.
sorry. I didn't
No
bring-
worries. I
didn't
also
bring
have some
cookies.
combos here if anybody would like a pretzel.
Same number of calories, probably.
Are we waiting for calculations?
I don't think that she's gonna be able to get that calculated without, she has received what we asked of the sheriff's department the other day to identify those individuals and put them on their lines. And without having that information to
Right.
put in there, it's gonna be difficult for her.
Well, and it's still, it might, well, she put in corporal pay at 14,000. She put in corporal pay at 14,104. She put in lieutenant's pay at 21,032.
And those
Those are
are
the
what would be
increases.
added
Yeah.
to,
So the
What,
rest
but
of
I don't have
You have to
who
have
it is
who.
or what their matrix is, so I don't have, I can add those totals into it.
that's what I did to get to the, I think I added 14,000 and 20,000, but that's okay.
Because her numbers are way different than, some of her numbers are
Talk
different
about the
than mine.
increase because of the
Because of the way they're doing the brass tier thing.
lieutenants and all that. Okay.
Yeah,
Could make up to 20.
so,
So you have given all these calculations and
Yes.
updated the Baker Tilly report, the Baker Tilly report to be less conservative because they're very conservative in their projections.
yes,
You still project with everything we've talked about, they end up with a $6.4 million general fund balance
yes,
next year.
yes. And that's very conservative because that is before we take $875,000 or $878,000 out and put it into public safety lit.
So we should be taking nothing from reserves from my estimation. Is that what you're saying
If these
also?
things calculate correctly, we will
Right.
be taking very little from reserves.
And if they
And I
don't
think-
calculate this
Go
way,
ahead.
Then we're not gonna be off that much.
okay,
That's my,
that's my hope.
that's my hope. And as I said in your email, I am not gonna be correct. There's no way possible for
When
me
you're
to be
dealing with these
correct.
numbers,
Yeah.
only an
But-
actuary. would
If we
be-
don't take this risk,
Well, we've not
we
taken
don't do
risk.
the raises and we increase our reserves and sit on more taxpayer money is the way I
Right.
look at it. So I think it's a calculated risk. We're trying not to sit on any more money
Right,
and
well,
move the money
I-
to our
I
employees.
think the last 3 years, we've not taken any risk. And that's why it's been building.
Right.
So I'm not opposed. If these are the numbers and they pan out even close, I'm not opposed.
Well, if we move that $878,000 out of the general fund, we'll still be sitting on a $7.3 million balance in the general fund.
And our cash balance at the beginning of the year, Baker Tilly is saying is gonna be 7.1. So
So it's still increasing.
it's still
based on
increasing by
that.
200,000 if we were spot on. If you were spot on.
Correct.
You get all the math credit. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I got all the
Yeah.
math wrong, it's gonna be a bad year.
I said, we'll garnish it from your pay.
No worries.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm right. So I went back in and put retirement contributions of 589, the 589, 982.
Yep.
And then I took out the vehicle maintenance.
Yep, the 156,000.
the 156,625, and I added those plus all,
All the sheriff, lieutenant, corporal, captain, and sergeant wages into public safety.
and I have repair and maintenance. Then I've added 250 to repair and maintenance.
You,
That came out of
jail maintenance,
jail
out
maintenance.
of jail maintenance, yes.
Okay. Just checking, make sure I had it right.
I think that's right. And once you guys run that, we'll be, of course, I think you're probably gonna have to get some clarification from the sheriff's department before you can
Yeah,
get those right, but that's okay. But we'd love to see those as soon as we can.
we'll do them first thing in the morning.
No worries. I was
I don't know how soon you'll get your itinerary.
astonished that you had everything done that you had done, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, Debbie.
It makes this process go easier if we do it like that.
It does. We asked a lot of you, so thank you.
I echo that. I did hear that.
Did you, I can't hear everything you guys are talking about. Did you already kind of go through the EMS lit? I heard you talking about doing, Debbie's gonna work on judicial.
We did not, but we know 300,000's got
Yeah.
to come out of that.
So that-
And in my opinion, there's the remainder that's there needs, we talked about using it for Henry County EMS. That's what it's for. We need to have some discussions at some point. Their budget is large and exceeds what revenue projections will be in that area. So EMS is a tough one in that if they don't have some of the things that they need to generate revenue, they can't generate revenue. They can't generate revenue without having some of the things they need. Their grants that they've applied for may come in sooner than later. I'm not opposed to just leaving that. That's why I said when we talked with Mandy, I'm not opposed to just leaving that budget the way it is. Because it doesn't impact the general fund. We've now got the EMS lit that we can allocate those dollars when we have them. And if she's able to proceed and generate revenue without you getting any dollars, maybe we don't need to allocate them immediately. Maybe we need to allocate them later. So what we end up actually allocating and when, I don't know. That's a good question.
I think there's a possibility of the Newcastle asking for more either next year or it's going to happen, but I don't know when. My crystal ball's not fine tuned, but which means at that point, this is our year to build up what's needed to get whatever kicked off that Josh was talking about and Mandy was talking about, because there's not certainty there's gonna be that 176,000 next year for Henry County EMS. I mean, unless your crystal ball is fine too, not fine. tuned.
My crystal ball is not fine tuned.
I
There's a
think-
lot of, a lot of possibilities there.
I think at the current lit rate, next year, there wouldn't really be, if they come back and ask for 400,000, 450, it's gonna quickly consume the current lit rate.
Sure could.
It may not affect the general fund, but it's gonna affect taxpayers paying for a transport service if it's not more than that next year. So hopefully all the things they have planned comes to fruition, or otherwise I think there's less justification for continuing down the path we've seen the last 3 years. So they've got a year to prove that they're able to see the progress according to the schedule that they shared. If that doesn't happen, or the balanced billing doesn't help, and all the other things they're planning doesn't help, they're probably not gonna have that kind of money next year, because I really anticipate Newcastle asking for 125,000 more. Don't know, crystal ball. Got a year to do it. I hope they're not expecting it every year.
So at one point in time, I believe that Henry County EMS will come and ask to fund a position, and she's asked for it in the budget. And we did not change it. It's in her budget. But there is no feasible way for her to pay that out of her
I'm-
current budget.
I'm leery for all the reasons I said.
Sure.
I'd rather deal with as much as possible certainties, and there are a lot of uncertainties there, but
There's
I
certainly,
feel, I felt all along for 5 years, I'd rather deal with not as conservative as Baker Tilly, but I'd rather play it safe.
yep. Yep, I understand. So I guess that's why we had that discussion with her and my thought was she needs to come back to us with a salary ordinance for hiring a new position.
That's the way we left it, wasn't it?
I think so. So
I think so too.
the real question is that
Okay.
Debbie asked earlier is we left that in her budget. So do we need to remove that out of her budget? And
I play it
So this
safe.
is my struggle with it is, even if we remove that position out of our budget,
Mhm.
that doesn't guarantee us that, I mean, that she breaks even. I mean, that's
Right.
her projection. She knows her business. So
sure,
in my mind, what she needs to know from us is if we're committing funds for it, not
Right.
whether she should keep it in. I mean, she may come to think she can keep it in and not need the lit funds, so I don't know how to evaluate that, but I think we need to be prepared to tell her if we're gonna commit the lit funds for that position.
and the question is when, if we're, in my mind, we're not gonna have that money until January at the earliest, so
That's the earliest I would want to consider committing funds
me too,
personally.
so
Hey, I'm
that's
leaning
kind of
with you
where
too.
I was at, just leave that budget where it is and we'll deal with it in January.
I think, I would like. I
So
agree.
that salary would be 56,830 for the new position she's asking, is 56.
So if she brings someone on now, she would need to anticipate being able to cover that from her own
And the other
budget
thing you're
or
gonna have to
revenue stream.
decide is the $80,000. Are you going to make her pay that back in November? Or are you going to
She paid any
gift
of it
that
back
to her? Nope.
to date?
Nope.
No, okay. That was the agreement, wasn't it? Or the
Yes,
thought pattern?
But we just, yes, it was. However, we have changed the game by suggesting that everybody goes to 97% September 1. And she
Right,
doesn't have the
right.
budget to cover that. So either we need to cover it like we talked about for probation, or,
I would be in favor of covering the raise amount and separating that from the 80,000 and perhaps.
so it would, I'm indifferent. It's checks passing in the mail in my mind. If she can cover the 80,000 and paying it back, then
What would be the amount of the increase for her?
I
she-
could look, but I honestly don't think that by the end of this year, she'll be able to pay the 80,000, not by the end of the year, like it's supposed to be.
I would be optimistic.
Mhm.
especially if she's gonna be paying those higher wages out of her budget, then she won't be able to pay it back. That's the key.
Yeah.
We told her that we could cover those
We did.
additional.
So we're gonna float alone.
For 4 months, it won't be alone. It'll be covering their wages.
Okay. Well, I was
So
gonna
we're
say,
really just, I think what Debbie was getting at is whatever that dollar amount is for those 4 months, subtract it from the 80,000. Is that what you're recommending, Debbie?
I like that.
Yeah,
That makes
it
it
makes
easy.
sense, because
That would probably have to have an ordinance change from Joel.
Yeah.
my preference would be to actually float alone and negotiate the interest rate,
You can calculate that out.
prevailing interest rate. But That's, that's tongue in cheek for those listening. Being conservative
You
again.
remember what Shannon told me about tongue in cheek?
Yeah, I know, I know. It always comes back and bites me, always. Because people take me serious when I'm not sometimes.
So you would subtract, the raises are $48,083. If you subtracted that from the 80,000, it'd be 31,917.
That they would need to pay back.
Okay. That seems like a good
Once we,
compromise, I guess.
once we pass those salary ordinances, we'll need Joel to change that.
So
ordinance.
is Debbie keeping track
Are
of
you
that
gonna
number?
keep that figure for us? Cause I didn't write it down.
She's
Okay,
got
she's
it.
got it.
All righty,
Okay.
31.
The amount paid back is 31,917.
That will still need to be paid back.
That will still need
Okay,
to be paid.
Got it.
Yeah. It seems like, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, well, pretty often. I was gonna say, At the rate we're going, we'll be here till midnight. I'm sorry, you didn't hear that.
Someone will have to get food. and
So are we
food
going
if
to
that
leave this
happens.
budget as is? Are we gonna take the
I know.
56,000 out of this budget for that position? Or are you leaving that 56,000 in as that
I
position?
still think that that's her budget. She just needs to know if we are gonna give lit funds for it this year, because we didn't adjust any of her other numbers to make her balance, because we don't really understand her revenue stream. So in my opinion, I don't care if it stays or goes, as long as she knows there's no lit funds till January when we,
Do you think we should make those lit funds build before she fills that position to get a-
Those will come to us in January.
January?
Are they every 2 months or are they?
Every
quarterly?
month.
Every month?
Well, I'm assuming they're, and I know you should never assume, but my assumption is those will be the exact same as the others and we'll get a month of.
Yeah. I guess timing is everything on this one, in my opinion, and I don't know.
Oh.
We could come to January, she could still not have the grant to buy the equipment, and we don't need to hire anybody yet. But on the other hand, she could get the grant tomorrow,
But
and the equipment would sit there
I
unused.
think we'll know more in January.
Well, or we'll still be waiting, one of the above.
Well,
So-
yes.
I think it's
Like, well,
then
no.
I think it's a decision when the time comes. I mean, the council votes January, February, March, whenever
Right.
the time comes, and decides if the funds are there for the
I
position.
think we'll know more in January.
What'd you say?
I said, I think we'll know more in January. I'm repeating
You're
myself.
sticking
Well, I
with
just,
that.
because I think she talked about hiring the position now.
She has.
And that is my question. Do we want her to wait until the lit starts coming in before she can hire that
I would
position?
prefer that, but again, I'm coming down fiscally conservative, knowing the money's
I
not
just
coming,
think
but
she needs to know that we are not funding that position, and then she can decide on her own if she has
We-
the
we have
funds,
no
is what I'm
funds
thinking.
For that position
Yeah, I think
until
that's what you said
January.
Yeah,
I agree
because,
with what
you
you
know,
said.
she always has more expenses listed than receipts. And that's just the nature of her business. Yeah, so. Are you okay? with it?
No. Obviously, I'm not okay.
What are your thoughts, Mike, on EMS?
That's 15 pieces. That's a lot.
What you need it for. I said, it's kind of hard to prove money that you can't approve or prove what it's for. And I think we're safer to wait until January.
And if it comes in before then, she'll have to submit a request and see what happens, I guess, so.
If the lit comes in before then?
No,
No.
if.
Oh, if
the
her grant, yeah,
equipment
okay.
Comes in,
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, that's,
Then we'll know more.
okay.
so I think it's kind of just wait and see. Whether or not we leave that position in her budget, really. She can't hire it unless she's got the
Unless
equipment and
she's-
she's got the revenue
Feels
to
like
do
she
it.
can fund it, yeah.
The chicken and egg.
And then in January, if she's ready to do it, we have lit funds and we want to approve those,
Right.
we're good. Till then, we have no EMS lit budget, other than we know the 300,000 for
So
Newcastle.
we leaving this budget the same, not touching it then?
Think so,
Shannon, and you're her liaison, so.
yeah.
I mean, with that.
Yeah.
What next? Moving along, what next?
So I feel like the safety lit and the jail lit and the PSAP and the judicial lit and the EMS are good for now. All
Yeah,
the lits.
I do have a few minor changes
Okay.
that we received from Brian True, and he went,
You said,
yeah, well, he was on vacation all last week, and he
on cruise.
let me know that he wanted to go in and make a few minor changes based on the 97% that we discussed for Wagner and Shealy.
What's the phone number?
1235. 1235's PSAP. So he sent all these to Debbie. So if I can maybe just my thought is to just let her get through them and then we look at the PSAP budget.
Okay, I'm on it.
So calculation, he basically changed the overtime, bumped it up based on the hourly rate. He tried to get more accurate with Medicare. The part-time employees based on paying his part-time employees the same wage as the full-time employees hourly rate. Changed perf slightly based on the small increase. The one change that he did, want to make is he had 43,246 in there for 3 of the dispatchers. One of them is an open position. 43,246 is what they are paid before they get their certification. Once they get their third certification, they go to 44,216. His concern was we had 43,246 in the budget and he needs 44,216 in the budget for when they get their certification. So it's a small amount, but it is a change.
It just went to him.
So, yeah, I'm
And
sorry.
and he
It
had
came,
Sharon.
it came to, yeah, it came to Debbie and I. Actually, it went to Debbie and then I asked for a copy from Brian.
Phil Shirt. Can you forward it?
I can. Oh,
Either that or repeat what you just said again.
yep.
So what he might have to do on this budget
Uh-huh.
is Mandy's budget on EMS, I'm going through and taking the difference of her salaries of hers, so that should work. The difference on Brian's is we're probably gonna have to figure out where to cut to do an additional next year. And I can leave that up to Brian because I can't have the salary higher than what I advertised, and I think his is gonna come in quite a bit higher than what I advertised.
Okay.
So if it's okay with you, I'll just let Brian decide where.
That's absolutely
cut.
fine. I can tell you that the numbers that he put in there originally, though, were higher than what we.
Oh, they are?
They are.
Okay, all right, that's fine then. If they're higher, I haven't really looked yet, so.
Yeah, I believe they are.
Okay, okay.
So
We should be okay then.
I think we should be okay.
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I think we'll actually have a small reduction.
So what he sent to you in early July, then Debbie was not after the West stuff? 'Cause
It
his
was
actual
before.
budget- Okay, so that will be significant, potentially.
Actually, you're right. It's about,
Yeah, he
it's
put-
about 25,000 less than what he submitted.
Yeah, so
So
I
we
think,
should be okay.
I think we should be okay in that one. I really
Okay.
do.
Oh,
But if something comes up that there is, then yeah, let's ask him to pick and
Okay.
choose.
All right.
So, yeah, I would agree with those changes, PSAP's done as well.
okay. What were the ones that are outstanding that we really need to pin down?
So in my opinion, the next discussion is the levy split. If we're not gonna adjust that, then we need to work on the park budget.
Levy split for,
Like if we're gonna decrease the levy slightly for the health department by that, 50,000 and increase the park, if we don't, we need to work on the park budget. And then talking about Cume Bridge will be next year, but we could do the
Right.
park and health now.
what, okay, but
Would you like for me to send Paige an email? Would you like for me to send Paige an email about the levy?
yes,
We might as well, yeah.
because Jason
So we
said he
can-
would, but I don't know who's working this week, who's on vacation, who's doing what, but
So,
But two years ago, we adjusted the park levy up. It was a park levy.
I
Right.
thought it was health.
No, we took it
health,
from reassessment and put it in health.
Oh, from
So
reassessment of
park
health.
wasn't part of that. I thought it was.
Park got the jump last year because we decreased their health insurance amount.
And it's going back the other way now.
well, we had to increase their health a little bit,
60
yeah,
pounds.
45 to 60, yeah.
And that combined with the raises has now
And
made her.
I will say that based on projections, the park revenue is 498,000. And their budget is 500,648.
That's more than what I was saying last week.
So that's based on the sheets that I see today, which
Okay, hold on.
is only a couple of $2,500 difference, roughly. But the position that's the real,
Yeah, it's the
the
position. that was
position has been
removed. That's
removed.
right.
She wanted to have a foreman position,
Right.
and that's been removed, so
That's been removed since we talked.
That's why
I've heard.
she's basically balanced because.
that's
you
why
said
she's
it.
balanced, because
Okay.
we
That's
removed
right.
that position and she's basically balanced.
We also reduced her part-time wages pretty significantly to balance, and I think she was okay with it, but
She seemed to be. She wasn't fighting for it.
Right. So the question then is, do we want to rearrange the levy to be able to allow for the park to hire a foreman?
I'd probably say no, but I'm in that mood today. Somebody's gonna have to say no. I probably would lean say no because very few no's have been shared the last 2 weeks.
come on, Ken.
No, and it's not personal. I just.
So do you guys know exactly where the park board stands with that?
I mean, Rita
Rita
sat
was
here
here
with
with us.
Casey and
Yeah,
she,
I've talked to one because they contacted me. There's different opinions on different things. Not everybody's on the same page. There's different opinions about the home. Because that came
on the
up.
park board, you're saying?
Yeah. Not everybody's in
Right.
agreement with,
Well, whatever majority rules on that one, that's up to
I-
them, right?
I agree. I don't think
Yeah.
we should micromanage, but I would probably say no at this point.
I concur with you. Ken.
Has she talked to us specifically about the need? I'm trying to remember the conversation of what's driving.
Not that I'm aware of. Kyle, Betsy, you guys have any thoughts or opinions on foreman at the park or adjusting the levy to be able to pay for that?
I'm not in favor of Justin Levy.
I didn't
And,
understand.
and I think it is, that's what I don't remember. Is it a need versus a want? I couldn't remember how it would impact any of the part-time or how much we would spend part-time if we had a full-time foreman. I can't remember those things off the top of my head, so. Do you guys have any memory on that? How that would offset, or if it would be any benefit to have a full-time foreman, or would we still need to have all the, hourly funds set aside for overtime and stuff?
I don't think she's removed part-time help. I think this was additional. Do you remember?
No,
Yeah.
it was presented to us as additional.
Yeah, I think it's additional, not removing part-time help.
But then we reduced the part-time help drastically as well.
We really did. I mean, the devil's advocate side is just that there are some excess unbudgeted funds in the health department right now. So,
Yes.
and I understand all the complications of that. I'm just bringing it up.
I think you should bring it up because that's what councils do. But then we're going to decide what to do with that.
Right.
I guess my opinion is if we're gonna adjust the levy, we should do it once next year to try to take care of Hume Bridge and
I
other
would
things.
like to do all at the same time, and I don't think any of us heading into this knew that Hume Bridge was a different deadline, May, and all the others are like August. Who knew that? It's never come up before. And why is it different? Legislature, there's a reason,
So-
I'm sure.
You guys could consider it next year and potentially consider her new position then. Is it June? That the Cume Bridge can be
May,
done?
May
May.
31st.
And I think the reason the Cume Bridge and CCD are different is because of the way they can be spent. They have to be spent differently.
So Hume Bridge and CCD, is that the one you said?
Cume Bridge and CCD, the reason they're May is because of the way they're spent. They're spent differently.
Okay.
So, and it's the way the tax rate is, so,
There's rationale for it. We just-
Yes.
We just weren't aware. We weren't considering this back in May.
I would prefer to look at it all at the same time in the spring.
I'd rather do that than piecemeal it a little here and a little there.
I see nodding of heads on the big screen.
So one
I see
other
nodding
issue
of
is,
heads.
did she
lot of
lower her
places.
part-time wages below what we're comfortable with? Or are we just leaving it completely up to department heads to set part-time wages?
I think what we agreed is she had the ability to set the part-time wage as long as she did not exceed what a full-time person
I-
would get paid paid for that same amount.
This is where you're gonna slap me. I mean, more.
We've yet to begin slapping you, Ken.
No, I mean, I said, somebody's gotta say no to something, even if we think
You
buku
just said no.
dollars. Yes.
Yes or no?
I would rather, this is one thing I'd probably deviate from Wagner or Shealy. I would rather see it gone from $9 minimum to $12 minimum or $12.50 to $15 minimum. I'd rather see us go to $17.50 and turn it over to the, because nobody's calculated what all this part-time would be if it's paid the same. I know that's a recommendation, but I think we're on solid ground to keep going up. And we've been going up last 3 years higher than the prevailing inflation rate is. And it started so dang low with 3 departments being $9 an hour. And we still gave the department chairs the option to, that's, I've said it.
I-
It's up to you. 14.3% of the vote.
Well, I think we've already told all the department heads it's up to them. That we
Yeah,
will-
that they can go up to the full-time
Up
wage.
to
if
what
they want.
a full-time person making that wage was. And we had some say they're gonna do that, and we had some say they don't need to do that because they can fill those positions.
Well, that part is the same. We've always said, when we set the minimum,
Mhm,
we said it's still up to you because we had some outliers. I said, I don't
Sure.
feel good about paying $15 an hour or $12.50 an hour. Can I pay less? And the agreement was yes. So that kind of goes along with that
Yeah.
history, but okay.
So we're not gonna increase any of their budgets. We're just gonna leave it as is and let them choose.
They're not
Yeah, so,
asking
well,
more.
for the park, we needed to reduce her general labor to not submit a budget over what she requested. Because she didn't request her full portion of the levy. And then I guess as her liaison, my message to her should be, if she needs to make any changes now, she could consider her park rental, for additional funds, and then next May, the extra job will be reevaluated.
Yeah, we can have a discussion about adjusting the levy when the time comes, yeah.
That's what the previous council did.
So my rationale behind that was, I could be totally off base too. Please tell me if I'm completely wrong, but in the beginning of the year, are we going to need to have more labor then or more when it's nicer outside and there are more people around? So maybe better to address it later in the year than have that done right away. Does that make sense?
Understood part of that.
I think what he's trying to say is timing of when that labor is needed is not necessarily January 1
Right.
and maybe
Yeah, it's
more for the
seasonal.
summer
What it is.
season. So it still gives us plenty of ample time to address it, should we need to do that. Is that correct, Kyle?
Yeah, it is. Thanks for clearing that up for me, Shannon.
It's,
And
No
it's
worries.
seasonal need. I mean, they still do a few things at Halloween and
Right.
Christmas, summer where they need the extra labor.
it's usually between February and March before we can ask for an additional appropriation too. It's not right in January. It's usually between February and March before they open that back up.
You've told us that before. and
Mhm.
Sometimes we listen and sometimes the need
Sometimes
arises.
we-
before.
Sometimes we turn them in and
We-
they
we
let
did
sit there
hear
and
that
wait.
before.
Remember, we've got them on the agenda
We-
January
We
6th.
we weren't ignoring you. Sometimes the need's fairly critical sooner than that. But yeah, we've heard that at
Mhm.
conferences too. And we try to do that. What's next?
Susan,
Yeah.
we increased her general labor to $207,064. Her current budget right now, as the way you guys said it, is 500, or with the changes, 500,648. I don't know where that leaves her.
We're still talking Clark, right?
So we still have to go down to the 468 she submitted.
Now, she's got money and
Yeah.
she's got 200,000 in reserve
You won't
as
have
well.
that.
So, but over budgeting slightly, it doesn't concern me.
But she didn't, I thought we couldn't submit more than what she requested.
She can't, so we'll have to, I can
Yeah,
get with
Jason.
her, or you guys can decide what she wants to cut to do an additional appropriation later in the year.
But after
Yeah, she
March.
said general labor when she
But
was
she
here.
submitted 563,000.
I thought she submitted 460 something.
460,
I might be wrong.
465, 465, 364. is what she submitted.
And where we're at now,
Yeah.
500 and something.
Because we increased her insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got 3 sheets. One's 492,
That's
one's
the num-
563, and one's 500.
And the original one I have the original one because I didn't get rid of it. I just.
465.
Okay,
465,
yeah, so I don't have the
364.
original. That's my
And-
problem.
So I would just decrease her labor and to get her down to that submitted budget and then,
And then-
when
And
you have an exact amount, I'll email her what she needs to come back and ask for the additional for that line item.
Our first budget hearing, to that 465, we added 15,000 health and 9520 workman's comp for almost
Gonna have-
490,000.
Okay,
Ooh.
are you
You need
okay?
this?
You okay to get home?
Just to go? We don't want you to
That
do something behind the wheel. My brother
Thank-
had
yeah,
diabetes.
We're glad you
I-
came, Harold. Thank
Yes,
you.
very much.
Thanks for coming. We're glad you came.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You need another one on the road in case
She's got it taken care of.
I'm gonna have your rest. I got
you better. I said my
Okay.
brother was diabetic and he had,
You're
to-
okay.
you have to do what
Take
you
care
have
of
to do.
Thank you, Harold. Be careful.
Thanks. Thanks for being here. Hang in there.
one thing after the.
I understand. We,
I know.
Quick break for a
Yeah.
restroom.
yeah. It's a time for a break, if anybody needs a break. 5-minute break. I still, oh, she's on the phone. Well, maybe he won't take long. Hey, there's one in the basement. You can make it. Depending on the speed of the elevator. Thank you, Bobby. Our suggestion, everybody had to go.
All right. So I don't think we're gonna be done by 7:20. What do you think?
Hey, Debbie, I have a real important question for you.
Yeah, I got my stuff. I got my.
Okay,
camera.
they saved some for you. All right, that's good.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you very much. You didn't have to do that.
Well, I ate half your damn bag, so I figured I better.
Hey, it's fine.
Pinned down, but we've pinned down the majority. What we have yet to pin, well, we've got to go back to the surveyor. I think we're okay on statewide 911, that's 90% PSAP now.
Yeah, we talked about the
CCD,
split in the levy. I mean, the highway department's fine, so we really are just at, yeah, I think actually,
was there any change that he made in his spreadsheets that affected CCD?
no.
Well, he didn't have that
we
as
didn't
an
do
area.
anything with that.
I think we corrected CCD.
we
The
need
money
to-
started coming in, right? Well, you gave us a spreadsheet today and it's like $500,000 balance, or it looked to me like that was corrected. It just didn't have the revenues come in earlier in the year.
And I left it this way like my original thing.
I don't remember the number, the fund number of CCD.
540,000, I'm not sure what it's supposed to be.
What's the fund number?
1138.
Okay.
So if you left it at the 540, it was gonna leave you with $97,000, 47.5% operating number. So it should be fine. If we leave it as it is, 530.
Yeah,
Stephanie's probably getting her that early. I'll ask Stephanie.
reading your recommended changes that affect CCD, did it?
No.
She said that was 1138. I don't have it filed correctly. If it is, I've got it out of order if it's 1138. I saw it earlier, but it's not in, got them in the numerical order. Well, right now it's CCD.
Yeah.
It's not that, if we didn't make any changes, it's not important. And if you didn't make any changes. I just asked because it is a separate tax rate.
If I voted like said no one ever. That's pretty cool. Yeah, Josh's, some of Josh's folks came in the middle. And they sat there on the floor and he said, Miss Yaffe, you say Laura, he said, it's such poor person. And he's like, and then I gave him, I'm a poor person that has to do. 1138.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw it this afternoon at home. I mean, that was part of what you sent today as an update?
We didn't change anything in 1138.
That's what Shannon said. If that's the case, we'll skip that. We don't need to do anything.
Was there anything else?
Other than, what did, department heads, chief deputies.
Were we going to push back on anything from the sheriff's budget, or are we taking it as is this year?
That's why we might push back, so.
So I have a question, and I talked to Susan about it. Would we be better off on Medicare and Social Security and PERF? Stephanie can probably kind of give you an estimate of what she thinks you're gonna be short after some figuring, but with that being said, if we left it as is to do an additional, because you're gonna have to do an additional appropriation anyway, closer to the end of the year next year, so we'll know exactly how much we're gonna be short instead of doing a big guesstimate. I mean, that's your guys' call, but it is an option if we wait, since we're gonna have to do it as an additional, if we wait a little bit longer, that way we're gonna know more.
I'd rather know more specifics than guesswork.
And we've got the money to do that to start with, so we should be okay with that.
What do you think?
But that's up to
Makes-
you guys.
Makes sense.
I think so.
Makes sense to me, makes sense to
Makes
you,
sense to
Mike?
you people at home? You're still there?
Anyone still
Did you
there?
hear it?
To do it that way.
Anybody patient and still with us? What do we have to pin down yet? I know we,
They're still there. If you see the 4 down in the bottom corner.
oh, they're still there.
The other thing about the general fund, when we were looking at the commissioner's budget, we decided to leave the large increase. And that's still reflected in here too, isn't it?
Increase in
Okay.
what?
That 1,000,002 that was put aside to pay, deductibles for
Right.
insurance.
Oh,
Go ahead. We didn't cut it.
No, I know, no, to explain the calculation, was it went to 800 and some thousand. I didn't realize you guys were putting anything in the safety lit. So you had the 800,000 plus the 460, 1.2. That's how it was calculated.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
that could be
Good.
something that, actually, that and insurance, we could lower. And we need additional appropriation, we've got to pay it. And it sounds like I'm wanting to get through DLGF. I know it's not the world's biggest problem, but we've done pretty well with them. the last
We've
few
only
years.
been rejected one time and that was all my fault.
So we know that they're gonna have to pay. If it comes down to the liability, if it comes down to insurance, we'll have to do an additional program. I just would like to not have to deal back and forth with them. And it seems like two safe places to look at that if it comes
And
in.
if they tell you, when we do our budget hearings with them, they'll tell you those are the ones to cut. Your great big ones like that, to balance your budget, if you're gonna have to go for an additional next year, to cut your bigger numbers.
Well,
Yeah.
Then
I
you-
saw that, heard that in a conference one time.
Right.
Seems like those are logical ones that we know when the expenses come in, we've got to fund them.
So having 1.2 in the commissioner's budget and 352 in public safety, what do you think, Bobby? Can we cut 300,000 out of your guys's without any pain?
I think that's,
I think that's gonna total well over $1 million in removal out of the general
Yeah.
fund. So
Yeah, because like I said, I didn't know you guys were budgeting in the sheriff, so.
we appreciate you
Yeah,
guys making sure
it
it was
needed to
covered
be,
for sure.
and did we keep the technology request? I feel like we did, but I
We
want to
cut
make
it a
sure.
little bit, but
Minor.
Yeah, 120,000, I think, was cut
yeah, 60.
out of contractual services and computer maintenance, maybe. 60,000 in each.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right, yeah.
We did.
Mhm. Yeah, 60,000 in
I
each
remember
was
that.
cut.
Jeff said that's a great start.
Contractual services, you took down to 170. Computer maintenance, you took down to 315, so you took 60 off
Yeah.
of.
Each one.
For the 120
Mhm.
total.
That should
So you want to take the 1.2 million,
900,000.
building and liability down to 900,000?
Yes.
Okay.
And hopefully that'll be enough.
And if my calculations are correct, that's gonna take roughly 1.178 million out of the general
I
fund.
I think the likelihood of them saying you gotta cut this is now reduced.
As long as we are below what we submitted for the general.
And even.
Yeah.
Yes, as long as we're below it, even at that, we can take it out of something
And then put it,
and then put it back in next year.
let's see how close we are after that change.
Yeah, we should know tomorrow. Stephanie and I'll sit down first thing in the morning and work on all of this and get it to where we need it to be.
Did anybody submit anything I'm off a little bit on a side tangent, but barely. Any topics for Wednesday's meeting?
And I haven't heard from anybody.
So we got the two for Wagner and Shealy, those ordinances. And we're gonna do something with this.
And then your levies, your levies and I just emailed that to you.
Okay.
And your caps. And that's just to review. You don't have to act on it. It's just something you have to review in your meetings.
Right, I saw that in the last GLGF. They said the fiscal body has to do this in August. And that's what we have to,
You review it, but you can't do anything with it. I'm not really sure why they want you to review it.
I want to do what the law says, we have to review it. And you're on that, so if that's on the itinerary, we're good. What have we not?
I think
Oh,
Betsy needs something.
Betsy,
What you got, Betsy?
what do you want to do with the survey and the elected officials, Betsy? Want to make a motion?
I just got back in the room. I had to get something to eat. I was dying.
We were
So I
waiting
just-
on you to vote for, either make the motion or vote on.
On what specifically?
You can make a recommendation. You can't make a motion.
He's pulling your leg, Betsy.
Well, yeah, that was tongue in cheek. I'm
Let's-
supposed to announce that.
So Shannon.
But we
to
are back
answer
to that, aren't we?
The question I asked you, I think I'm okay with the sheriff in jail. I just went through it again. Did
You guys
see-
want me to send you a pizza?
I hope we don't need it.
I think we're,
We're
yeah.
good, thank you.
We
Thanks,
hope we're
Betsy.
wrapped up by 7. I don't think you could get it here by then.
No, probably not.
Even Grubhub, I doubt. So,
So you're good with all those calculations?
I am good with, yeah, I just went through the sheriff in jail again. I'm okay with it unless someone else is not.
we're trusting your numbers. We have
Absolutely.
faith in, you've done so much work. The likelihood of you making a mistake is less than me.
I think you
At
put a
this
lot of
point.
work into it and probably double and triple checked everything.
Well, I put a lot of work in to try and be as accurate as I can. That being said, I didn't have all the numbers either,
Well,
so after Debbie and Stephanie get those numbers in there, I think we're gonna need to review that.
Okay.
When do we review that?
Well, good question. I mean, that, really, the only item left, in my opinion, is the elected officials, elected department heads and chief deputies.
Can you come in early Wednesday? Oh, I know Mike can't, never mind.
Come in early Wednesdays,
Mhm.
like before 4:30.
Before 4:30, if you need to review something.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, we can do that.
So-
With the die.
What'd you say?
My iPhone doesn't recognize me
Oh,
with
really?
the die.
Well, I've put forth what I think we should do with elected department heads and chief deputies. And Kenan has put forth what he thinks we should do. Anybody else have any fantabulous ideas?
I have.
So on the elected official, you said start out at 65, 173, is that what you said?
Yes,
So you said 65, 173 for elected officials. and
Elected
for
department
Chief
heads, yeah.
matrons,
chief deputies
chief
would be
deputies,
58,
56.
656.
58, 656.
Correct.
So where does that put us with what Wagner Irwin?
Way above,
This is why we're all, well,
which is why Kenan is not in favor of doing something.
So could we come down a little bit on both and?
If you come down below 58, 656, you're leaving them excluded and
Okay, then
and we have to pay them overtime.
Okay.
Or I guess we don't if
You
they're
don't have
excluded.
to
But
because it writes them out. I know a lot of counties in the email we're getting, they bumped a lot of their excluded up to the 58, so they don't have to pay them overtime. They said it's cheaper to bump them up to the 58,000
Then to pay overtime.
than to pay them the overtime.
You think
Because
that-
you think a lot of them I know of. that
we're
are
not the only
excluded,
ones struggling with this.
Right, are
Understood.
going to make way more than your elected officials because they're going,
So you think they're gonna work a lot more than they are now? More than's necessary because of? the
absolutely,
overtime?
110%.
You know, if you look at the Debbie, you know, the overtime, I'm not sure that Bobby, the number of hours that Bobby has put in, I don't know if this is just for chief deputies. Is that just for chief deputies or for every?
No, I'm talking about our excluded that we have now. We have some that if they don't make the 58,000, chief deputies aren't part of that. They're
Okay.
outside of
It's other-
that. If they make less than the 58,
Mhm.
then
Then they get paid over.
They get
Right.
paid
You know, when you look at the different offices, depending upon the time of the year, whether it's the treasurer's office or the assessor's office.
yeah, but the assessor and treasurer only have one, and that's the chief deputy. That's the only
Okay.
one they have that's excluded.
Okay, they do. Okay.
And the other employees working in that area will get paid overtime and could, with their overtime, essentially make more than the elected
Mhm.
official.
Correct.
Well, it's going to affect greatly the coalition coordinator in health, deputy director in community corrections, promotion and disease, not so much. EMS director. Wait, the 911 director is going way up, so that's not going to be in it. She didn't know that at the time. EMS director,
The EMS director's over the 58.
or it is now, isn't it, with the correction?
We have offices that turn in between 15 and 25 hours of overtime per pay.
So I'd like to have this page corrected on page 15, that there's 12 positions that she said we need to look at with the new salaries that were raises were, because it looks like half of these are going to be bumped out with a raise.
But the chief deputies are excluded.
they're not on this list because
They're-
they are not
because they're
required to get
excluded.
this.
Yeah, I'm looking at her exempt list. That's nowhere close to 58, 656 in January.
We're gonna have to pay them overtime.
Anybody?
If the 97% didn't get them above that 58, we're gonna have to pay them over.
Up to 58.
58, 656, federal law.
Right, that's what I'm looking at.
Just from a round numbers perspective, if you work 10 hours of overtime at $20 an hour, 45 weeks of the year, that puts you at $9,000.
Yep, that's what Debbie was kind of
That's
suggesting.
way above the 58,000.
Well, yes, it can be.
Can be.
Well, you guys make a motion.
All right, Shannon, let's hear it.
You don't.
I don't think I can make a motion, but I
You
would
don't,
like,
I will.
Make a suggestion.
my suggestion is what I suggested earlier, is the 65-1, what was it, Mike, 65-137?
For all elected officials?
65,173.
65-173 for all elected department heads, and 58,656 for all
Correct.
chief deputies.
Well,
I agree.
58 what?
656.
I agree.
What about online, Kyle, Betsy?
So I was just checking the math again. We're good on the math.
I think so.
Chad's not here.
Okay. It's really hard to hear some of this stuff. So yeah, I would be in favor of that.
Betsy?
I concur.
All
On my
right.
vote.
So we don't have a vote, but we have consensus less one
Yeah, you know mine.
to make those changes in the budget, and then we will get to see the net impact. It'll be just over $100,000.
It will be, like I said, we'll work on it first thing in the morning. Kenan, I just have you do your itinerary for this
It's
week.
only money.
What'd you say?
I'm just, my soapbox, it's only money.
We
you're
cut
welcome
over
for
a
the
million,
raise.
we cut over $1 million out of the general. fund, though.
Well, good. We just
I
put
got
our 100 back into
organized.
it. So it's only money. Money, 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 money.
All right, well, we started rough, but we ended well.
Overall, I think you guys did a
Good.
good job. in
The only
spite of me
last
saying
item I
no.
have is, do we want to try to no, we didn't, we settled on that safe at home director. I'd look, adding it later if we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
Right.
can't make a decision on that yet.
I agree.
Are all counties losing that, or is it just,
No, it said that we're the only.
We're the only county that has that?
Particular position, but those roles are filled with by other counties.
Yeah,
It's
it's,
not-
it's,
grants completely going away.
it was
That's
reduced
what
by
they-
40%. I know, if
thought
it's
they said
going
it was
away,
gonna
that's additional news to me.
Is that federal?
Yeah.
And I'll pass on to the sheriff that if he wants to submit some type of report to those interested, which were Mike and Kyle and Betsy and I, about the actual cost for turnover, that he can do that.
thank you.
I'm interested in the stat. I know he shared at one time the cost for training, one of those times we were in the training room.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And I understand, it's a lot.
Because I think if he's losing the biggest part of his people I think if he's losing the biggest part of his people within the first year, I kind of think it would be a good idea to put something in there that, like other departments have, that you have to pay it back.
So
That's because that is a lot of money.
I'm hoping the $10,000 will reduce the turnover. It's just, it's a moving,
money isn't gonna fix everything.
I don't
just
think it will, because when we go up
And
$10,000, somebody else is
you-
gonna go up even more.
You have to pay a fair wage. You have to make it a decent place to work.
Exactly.
You have to treat people right. And
it's called a hygiene factor
have-
wage.
And what was it you said, Kenan? No matter what it is, the sheriff's always the one that's in last place or something like that.
I can't hear you for some reason, sorry.
Because he keeps saying
Somebody had said that
Dynamic.
it doesn't matter that the sheriff, they're always going to be behind.
Everybody is, but
every-
less behind now. than
every
what happened.
department's gonna be behind, and I
Right.
guess that's the other piece of the puzzle. If we're gonna ask for stats from the sheriff, I know we've got employees in other departments that leave just as often. It's maybe just not as impactful. as-
Yeah, we're not paying for them to be trained so much. If I recall correctly, and this
I don't want to sound
wrong,
discriminatory, because I don't mean less impactful by the personnel changes, less impactful from a budget standpoint because of the cost of training. So I want to make that distinguished, but we have employees leave other departments. It happens. They can go elsewhere and make money. I guess I would love to see what the turnover rate and the cost is for every department in the county.
I
That would be,
think
give
that
us a good
would be great.
comparison. But I don't
Yeah.
know how we go about doing that unless we just ask each department head to do it.
Might be
Um,
Gonna be a lot less now.
Yeah, that,
I would hope.
Next year.
Go ahead, Betsy.
just to add on to that, I told Susan this last night, this number could be totally wrong. It's just what I'm recalling. I think, to train up a deputy and get them on the road, it's like $20,000. So, I will stand corrected. That's the number I'm remembering, or more. But it is, there's impact there.
right. And there's impact to other departments, so I get that, but it's always nice to see a number, so
I agree. I like numbers.
I know you do.
Okay, so I have one more question.
Shoot.
When will you make the decision about the salaries for September 1st? You're waiting on me to do, are you waiting on us then to come up with for each department then?
If,
For an
based on
ordinance.
everything you know right now and the decisions that we've just put forth, can you draw up the
Yeah, we'll work on
the
something.
ordinance and have it, could it be ready for Wednesday?
I'm not gonna promise that, but we'll work on it and see what we can come up with.
I-
I think we can come up with,
I know we're pushing and we're trying to get.
I don't think we
raises for
have-
Everybody as soon as possible.
I don't think we're gonna have to list each person out. I think when we do the additional, we can do it like just to put it in as personal services for clerk, personal services for auditor, that way.
Might make it easier and then you guys can,
Yeah, I
Make
think
it
that's the way
all
we can do
happen.
that. Yeah.
So we don't need to come in before 4:30 on Wednesday, I think, with the discussions we just had.
I can work with you and be here a little early if I need to. It's not a problem.
And I think we should be okay. We should have it to you in an email.
Awesome. Great work, everyone.
What Shannon said. Anything else?
Motion to
Adjourn?
adjourn.
Until Wednesday.
All right. See you guys Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.